Wurundjeri, Wurundjeri, Narapu, 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 Narapu.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Wandin, and I'm an elder of the Wurrung Tribal Land Council, on whose land you may be joining us to watch this afternoon's webinar put up by DjabWurrung. I don't speak much language of my ancestors, but my ancestors speak through me in English. Wurundjeri BIIK. Welcome to Wurundjeri country. I pay my respects to my ancestors, my elders, both past and present, for the knowledge that they have been able to pass down to me and continue to pass down to me, that I can share with my children and my grandchildren and the future generations of my family. I pay my respects to all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are with us today, to their ancestors and elders, both past and present, but also their elders emerging. And again, for the privilege of being able to meet with them in recent years, to exchange what knowledge we have, but to also understand the gaps that have been lost due to colonisation and the loss of our language and access to land. And I pay my respects for the people who give me this opportunity, and that is represented by our mothers and fathers, but not only our physical mothers and fathers, our spiritual mother and father. For us, our spiritual father is Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, who gave us the law of this land. And whilst there are many laws that govern how we as Aboriginal people lived prior to colonisation, they still govern us today. But one most important law that he gave to us that I live by, he said, you must care for your mother. Not only your physical mother that you are born from, who looks after you when you are young and weak and defenseless. And as you grow, she nurtures you and teaches you life lessons, clothes you, shelters you, provides medicine when you are sick. And as your physical mother grows older and you grow older, you return that favour, that privilege. And in her ancient wisdom, as she becomes weaker, you look after her and provide shelter and food and clothing and medicine. We must also do the same for the spirit of our mother, because the spirit of our mother, of course, is much older than any of us. And she is tired and she needs our help. She has nurtured us and all other humans all across the world for countless thousands and thousands of years. And we have taken and taken and taken because we've lost the vision, the knowledge of Bunjil's first law, to actually care for country as if it is our mother. Because it is the land on which we live, work and play that provides us with all our resources. But it is not limitless. In the ways of our ancestors, which we need to relearn, is to only take what we need, but whatever we take, we leave the land in better than what we found it. That is very difficult to do in these times, but it is not impossible. It is going to be a combination of our ancient knowledge, the modern science as we deal in this economic world, instead of the ecological world that we should be caring for, to support not only us, but also our future generations. But remember that the land is not there just for us as people. The land is there for the animals and for the trees and the plants. And they all have their own rights and privileges. And all this knowledge was known to my ancestors, and some of it is still known today. And we are relearning our culture. And when we go out there, we don't look at how many potatoes we can grow or how many tomatoes we can pick. It's going out there and looking at the health of that tree, because we know that with healthy trees, we have healthy country. But what indicates a healthy tree? Just because it goes green in the springtime does not mean it's healthy. A tree is healthy when it is full of birds, when you can see the possums and the koalas, when you can see the goanna climbing up the tree, when you can see the ants and the insects and the spiders and the bats, and all the things that the tree supports of a nighttime and a daytime, during the spring, the summer, the winter and the autumn. But we also need to look down at the ground, at what's underneath it, the grasses and the smaller trees, the shrubs, and the things that use them, the animals, the birds, the insects and the reptiles. And when you see that you've got all that in balance, that at certain times of the year when you should be looking for a certain bird, if the bird is not there, why isn't it there? It's usually because the tree is not healthy. And that's not obvious to the modern man, but it is obvious to us as Aboriginals. And the sad part about that is when we see sick country, that we become sick ourselves. Not necessarily physically, but we become sick spiritually. I know in the work that I've done in teaching young Aboriginal people to go out there and work on the land and to care for it the way that our ancestors instructed us, that they improve without even knowing that they're sick. In this time of COVID, when we've been locked in our houses, every human being now actually values the opportunity to walk that 5Ks around their house, 10Ks, whatever it is now. And they are really starting to look at country. And I hope, though, that they're learning the privilege that it is for us to enjoy the fruits that were given to us by Barkandji, our creator. Wamidjika, Wurundjeri, Biik. Welcome to Wurundjeri country. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Uncle Dave, for your beautiful welcome to country and for generously sharing your knowledge that you've gained over your lifetime, and for the knowledge that you share that you've inherited from your ancestors and my ancestors. You're my uncle, my blood uncle, and I'm proud to call you that. And yeah, I just love the work that you do out on country with children. I know you've worked with not just First Nations children, but children in the community who've suffered during the 2009 bushfires, and you've brought great healing to those communities who have been affected by those catastrophic events. And yeah, I just love the way you advocate for country and for the animals, the wildlife, and really bring it into perspective, and it makes perfect sense. So thank you. I am very grateful that you're here with us today. So Bilarun yang wangat, nadanik Stacie, Wurundjeri WILAM BIIK, Wurundjeri balakut, ba DjabWurrung, ba Ngurai lamwarang, Mundanai muruk balada bidadang, Mundanai liwik bulok nugalik, Mundanai WILAM BIIK, ba bubuk sporais ba kidab. So I've just done my acknowledgement in the Wurrung language, which I've been fortunate to learn from one of our family members, Mandy Nicholson, an incredible language reviver and linguist. And in the Wurrung language, I just acknowledged my ancestors. Well, I introduced myself as well, Wurundjeri, DjabWurrung and Wurrung woman. It's a bit of a tongue twister. And I acknowledge the Bidadung, which is in the back image behind on my screen. That's the beautiful Yarra River, which is flowing nearby me. And I took that a couple of weeks ago, so it's healthy and strong. And I acknowledged the Liwik, my ancestors, the WILAM BIIK, our home country, a place we all call home, every single one of us. So we all need to look after it. And I acknowledged the bubuk sporais, which are our children and babies, our future generation, and the ones we do all this work for, really, because we want to leave country the way we found it for them. And also I acknowledge the kiddup, which is our friends. That's all of you who have joined us today, and yeah, taking the time out of your Saturday to listen to myself and to incredible women who are out there advocating and caring for country. I'd also like to thank Tarawara Museum of Art and my colleagues who have put a lot of work into the exhibition, which is currently on at Tarawara, and there'll be a 2-and-a-bit-week window for people to come up and see it, so I hope you can. We'll be announcing that soon, and obviously this session today is linked to that exhibition. So to put things in context, WILAM BIIK, for the past 2 years, I've held the role of First Nations curator, and with the support of the Victorian Government initiative, which is called Yalingwa. So that's a partnership between Tarawara and ACCA and Created Victoria to help amplify amplify the voices of artists in the southeastern region, and 3 curators. So I'm fortunate to be the second curator in this program, 6-year program. And yeah, I've brought through, or been able to bring through, a story of the southeastern region and our connections to country. So there's 10 artists in the exhibition, and they all connect via the water lines, the bush lines, and but basically the song lines. So we're all connected through country. And this is a story of our connection, but there's definitely the underlying messaging through the exhibition around our concerns with the health of country, and how it's, you know, how we need everybody to join us in caring for it. So again, I'm really excited and honoured to be joined by 2 incredible First Nations women. And I'll jump to some pictures. I picked these out just because, as we do as Mob, we like to show, you know, we wear a lot of hats. So, you know, I could be here all day showing images of these 2 incredible women, but I'll start going to show the city. Okay, so actually we're going to show the 30-second preview of WILAM BIIK first, then we'll go into the images. So we could play that.
Wurrung, 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 narapo, 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 narapo. Tarangak, tarangak pik, punjula, punjula, wilamu, 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 wilamu.
So we have a 7-minute video, which we'll play at the very end if you want to stick around and watch it. And the reason I'm talking very fast is because I'm aware of time. We love to yarn. And I know once the lovely Lydia and Zena join me, we're going to be yarning up. So I want to get through this first section so that we can just move into that. So WILAM BIIK, it's the soil, the land, the water, the air, the sky, and the animals that reside within. It's the only home we know, and we honour it for its sacred exchange. And as Uncle Dave mentioned, you know, it's our place of sustenance. It's where we get our food, our clothing, our medicine. And it's also a place for us First Nations mob where custodial rights and responsibilities never left. So we still carry that responsibility, and we take it very seriously. It forms part of our values, and that will, you know, that crosses all mobs across the country. First Nations people of Southeast Australia are part of communities and ancestral stories which extend through deep time. WILAM BIIK, home country, is a place we connect to when we need to go within ourselves and we seek our truth. So when we honour country, we always honour the ancestors first, the Liwik, and WILAM BIIK acknowledges this by placing works of the ancestors at the start of the exhibition. So our cultural values are woven through the curatorial process up at the gallery. Our ancestors passed on knowledge through storytelling, ceremony, dance and song, and always adorned themselves with pieces of country, pieces crafted from country. We continue this practice today as their descendants, and we still create these personal tools and adornments, and we still access country. It's our medicine. So I call you to listen with your eyes, your ears and your hearts, you know, deep listening. And as our ancestors would say, and Uncle Dave mentioned as well, if you know, join us in caring for country, you're most welcome to the lands of the Wurundjeri people. So I will go in to introduce our 2 speakers and into those images. So as I've started mentioning, I like to show pictures because we wear many hats. And Lydia Thorpe, you know, she is a senator, but she's also a grassroots activist. And so, you know, I didn't find a really old one because there's really, really old photos of Lydia out there in rallies and protecting country. But I thought this was a beautiful shot of Lydia, out there doing her thing. So this was a picture of Lydia when she was starting her first journey in state parliament. So it brought all the community together. This photo doesn't really show it, but there were hundreds of people gathered. We had a smoking ceremony and it was a boiling hot day, and she was wrapped in a possum cloak. So this is a shot of Lydia walking up into her, you know, her role at state parliament, and then obviously she went on to become a senator in the national parliament. So I'm going to read out her intro, but this powerful shot is when Lydia walked in and was holding a message stick which was carved with or burnt with 441 markings, which represents the 441 deaths in custody since the Royal Commission, and there have been more since. So that's another issue, but that's something very serious that we advocate for daily. So Lydia is a Senator of Victoria, a proud Gunnai Gunditjmara and DjabWurrung woman, a lifelong activist and fighter for human rights, social justice and the environment. Senator Thorpe is the portfolio holder and Greens federal spokesperson for First Nations justice and sport. In 2017, Lydia Thorpe became the first Aboriginal person elected to the Victorian Parliament as the Greens MP for Northcote. In September 2020, Lydia took her seat as Victoria's first Aboriginal senator in the federal parliament. Lydia was sworn into the Senate holding the message stick, one for each death in custody since the handing down of the findings of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. So her stance there is the pure essence of Lydia and her gesture of strength and solidarity. And then we are also joined today by the wonderful Zena Cumpston. And we have some images to share of Zena as well, who does deadly work in the arts sector, but also in the research and education sector around Indigenous plants and regeneration of country. Zena Cumpston is a Barkandji woman with family connections to Broken Hill and Menindee in Western New South Wales. Zena works as a writer, a curator. On this image is with her family in Menindee. I loved this photo, so we included this. That's her and her mob out in Menindee, up right on the Barka, which we'll get into the Barka, but that's a river that's really critically endangered. Zena works as a writer, curator, consultant, academic, storyteller, and educator. This image here is Zena and Uncle Badger Bates. That's her uncle, and that's up on Barkandji country, recording and interviewing Uncle for her current exhibition, Emu Sky. And he's a staunch advocate for the Darling Barka, but it's not even a staunch advocate. As Uncle Badger says, he is, Barka is him, it's his mother. So without the Darling Barka, we don't have, there's no community. As far as he's concerned, he doesn't exist without the Barka. So most recently, Zena produced a free booklet exploring Indigenous plant use that has been used widely by schools and community groups. In 2021, she curated the show Emu Sky for the Science Gallery in Melbourne, exploring Aboriginal knowledge of country and bringing together over 30 Aboriginal community members sharing their stories, research, knowledge and artworks. And that's Zena and her beautiful mum. And we included that one because that's just, two amazing women out there catching a feed. And it's such a beautiful photo. Throughout 2021, Zena worked alongside Dr. Terry Janke as a co-Indigenous author on multiple chapters of the Commonwealth State of the Environment Report 2021. So on that note, I'll ask the ladies to join me and turn your cameras on. Yeah, thank you for joining the discussion, Zena and Lydia. And as I mentioned, I've really reeled all this off because I want to just get to the discussion, but there's so much to say about each of you. We could take the whole hour session just talking about your achievements and how deadly you are in caring for country and advocating and getting, the really important information out to, the communities who call this place home and who need to be aware of what's happening and how they can help us. So I'll just go straight into my first discussion point. So the exhibition WILAM BIIK invites audiences to consider the questions: how do we see country? How do we listen to country? And how do we connect to country? So I'll begin by asking each of you to maybe share a little bit about your background and your home country. So maybe Lydia, if you'd like to go first.
Thank you, Stace, and I'll first acknowledge that I'm on your land, unceded land of Wurundjeri people, and I just want to pay my respects to you, Stace, Uncle Dave, and the Barkandji warrior Zena. Like, how perfect is that? In terms of myself, I'm a Gunnai Gunditjmara and DjabWurrung Wurrung woman, and I come from a very strong matriarchal line where I have been empowered with cultural knowledge and cultural connection through the matriarchs of my family, because that was the responsibility of being a sovereign Black woman of those countries. It comes with responsibility. It's not a tick box, it's actually responsibility. And that's my background, that's all I know. And fighting for country and people is what my old women in my family and people have done all their lives. So it's just normal. And looking at those pictures, I just think, wow, that looks so perfect, you know, it looks so like deadly and she's climbed up the ladder and all of that. But I just think about all the injustice that also occurred in the background of that journey, and the destruction of country and the deaths since walking in with 441 names. Now we're almost at 500. So connection to country is, you know, we are not better than country. We are not better than our animals and our totems and our water and our sky. We are equal too. And until everybody understands that in this country, we will continue to put our mother at risk of extinction, and us. If the planet dies, we all die. And we know as sovereign people from our own countries is when something dies, like, you know, when our eagles, our Bunjil, the creator spirit, was poisoned by a farmer in Far East Gippsland, the day before I had to decide on whether to vote for a treaty in Victoria Parliament. And that to me was saying, Lydia, don't do it. And so to walk into Parliament the next day with a heavy heart of, you know, 30 wedge-tailed eagles being murdered and poisoned by a white fella for greed and gain, I knew that I was doing the wrong thing by saying yes to the treaty. And so it was the only time I was ever compromised as a politician, as a Black person. If I say no to treaty, then that's going to be shit. If I say yes, maybe we can make it better and we can stop this destruction of our country and hold those people to account, and maybe take people on a truth-telling journey, which includes the importance of country. Women are the keepers of water. If our water supply is cut off, the blood in our veins is also cut off. So we cannot ever separate ourselves from every other living being on our land and in our water. Thanks.
Thank you, Lydia, for sharing that and reminding us of the terrible murders of our creator being Bunjil. It was quite devastating. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know it's not easy. Zena, how would you like to share about your background and your connection to home country?
Thanks, Stace. Well, I guess I'll start as well by acknowledging that I'm on your country. I'm on Wurrung country, and I'm very aware that I wouldn't be able to do any of the work that I do on your country if it wasn't for the generosity of your mob. And I've found Wurundjeri people to be so generous and so amazing, and it's really helped me to want to do more, because I'm not living on my country. And so all the work that I'm doing, I'm always trying and keeping in my head that because I'm not on my own country, I have to honour the imperatives of your mob as well as my own. And I hope that I do that through some of the things that I'm doing. That's sort of what I'm aiming for. But yeah, I just want to acknowledge that first, that there's been a huge generosity for me to be able to live on your country, and I appreciate it. It's really wonderful to be here today, and especially because, you know, I'm talking with Senator Lidia Thorpe, who is someone that I've been watching and listening to and been really inspired by in my own work. And you as well, Stace. In some ways, you've been like a quiet warrior, more than some other people, you know, getting out there a bit. And I'm always blown away when I hear you speak, especially about country. So it's a real honour to be here today. So my mob are the Barkandji. Unfortunately, we've become fairly famous in the last sort of little bit because of what's happened to our Barka, and that's the Darling River. There's been some terrible bastardry, mismanagement, water theft, and I guess it's something that whilst I don't live on my country and I can't speak for my people because I've never lived on my country, it's something that's with me every day. And it also, it really spurs me on in my work and the work that I'm trying to do, because like Lydia, I think the foundation of everything that I'm aiming for is for everyone to come together with us on a truth-telling journey. Because as much as we often see us and them as Aboriginal people, it's very hard for us not to be angry sometimes at, you know, the wider sort of non-Aboriginal society of Australia and what's happening to us and has been happening for too long. But I think I really take a lot of, I take note of the way that Uncle Badger does things, because he's been a really important person in my cultural journey, especially as I haven't grown up on country. And he's always telling me that you have to bring everyone in because there's no way we'll do it on our own. So yeah, that's my sort of thoughts, but I'm not sure if I answered the question, but we should keep going.
I'm muted because Fenna's yarning up too, but it's good that she's here and listening as well. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, look, when it comes to the Barka or the Darling Barka, yeah, we need to support you, mob, and we have to get behind Uncle Badger's, you know, plight. I don't know, it's the wrong word, but he's just advocating on so many levels and trying so many different things. And I keep watching him, and yeah, we just need to support him because it's quite devastating what's happening out there. So with much on that note, with much of our country in the southeast and across Australia, so-called Australia, but you know, we're only focusing on the southeast here, and there's a lot going on here. But with much of this part of country, the waterways, songlines, totems being damaged by the industries which are over-extracting resources through logging, water irrigation, and you know, the logging resulting in more intense wildfires, as well as the drying up of waterways. We're sharing some more pictures here because I wanted to give a visual. So this is an image, and it's not even one of the harder to stomach images, but this is an image of the Barka, you know, dried up, and you know, the mobs can actually walk down into the bed of the river, and hence the flag. But yeah, it's quite devastating. And the next image will be, yeah, you know, it's quite confronting, but the mass fish kill that happened not early last year, the year before. I feel like I've, you know, lost a year with everything that's going on, but the mass fish kill just suddenly happened, and it was devastating and quite confronting to see. But that's due to the mismanagement of water and poisoning of our waterways. And as Lydia mentioned, you know, our waters are poisonous and dying, our fish are dying, our totems, but also we do. This poisons us. And yeah, Zena will go into a little bit further after I finish this sort of discussion point, but this mass fish kill is not the end. Even though it's sort of past, it's not the end of it. It's only, the way I see it, going to get worse if we don't start waking up and understanding that what's currently going on is not going to sustain country. And you know, we're having water sold off, irrigators are still mismanaging the waterways, and you know, the image that I have behind me on the screen gives you a perfect example of what a healthy river should look like, and that's not it. So yeah, I think it's important to open up and have a discussion around how we can educate people, as well as encourage them to make changes in their immediate lives. to pull away from the industries and our supply and demand. And you, Lydia and Zena, what do you in your daily lives do to reduce these impacts, and how can we encourage others on a practical level? Yeah, so I'll pass over to Zena. Do you want to answer this one first?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a hard one because I think, you know, a lot of structural change has to happen that isn't so much about individual action. But then I think that no structural change can ever happen without individual action. And I see the most important thing that I'm trying to do and to bring other people along on the journey of is becoming educated about what's going on. And I think another really important thing is that everyone needs to understand that there's a symbiotic relationship between Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander people and country. And I believe that whilst we can't be well, country can't be well. And I see the way forward as empowering Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander people to look after their own country in a way that's really, really meaningful, because we've got recognition in lots of different laws, the EPBC Act, UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. There's all these places where we acknowledge the custodianship and stewardship of First Nations people. But when it actually, when you look at what's happening, you know, on the ground, those acknowledgements aren't really being played out, because unfortunately we're still living in an extremely colonised conditions where we are not driving. We are in the back seat too often. We're seen as a sprinkling on top, a consultant that comes in afterwards. But we are actually, if you get the way that you look after country right for us and you let us drive it, everyone will benefit. And so I guess in my daily life, I'm just trying to think of the power that I've got as an individual. And one thing that I've done recently is change my super. My best friend's son was killed about 6 months ago now. He was a young person who really knew that we each have an individual responsibility. And what Leif did was he quit all the things he was doing in Adelaide, and he got on his bike because he realised that a lot of people were listening to him when he was talking about changing their super, because our money makes a difference. The way that they use our money makes a difference. And he really believed that if everyone changed their super, it would make a difference in terms of the industries that are really, really harmful, that are being propped up and supported by our money as individuals. And he started travelling on his bike from Adelaide to WA, and unfortunately he was killed in a really horrible situation. But Leif's family, my best friend Helen, they've started a website, leifjustham.com, leifjustham.com, and it takes you through how you can change your super and what that means. And it's actually a really simple process, and most people don't know about it. So whilst I see that there has to be massive structural change, I also see that in our everyday lives, becoming educated and doing things, especially with our money, can make a massive difference, because too much is happening to country and too much is happening to our people in terms of just massive disrespect and harm for us not to be taking our individual action seriously.
Yeah, wow. Zena, yeah, thank you for sharing that about Leif. I wasn't aware, and that's yeah, quite devastating. And we will share the links again when we repost this recording. And as you said, though, it's Leif, Leif, Justham, JUSTAM.com, and to support that cause. And I'm really sorry to hear about that, and love to you and your friend and their family. If we could just quickly go back to the images, I was going to show the some of the logging shots. So that's where we're up to. Thanks, Rob. So this is Uncle Larry. Just stop there if you can. Yeah, Uncle Larry. We were visiting, Lydia was there in 2019, and a number of us First Nations gathered from the mobs of Wurundjeri, Wurrung and Gunnai. They're the three main mobs that occupy this alpine forest region. And logging is a really serious issue going on up there. And even during COVID, the logs are still coming out of the forest on the daily. So you're talking, 5 football fields a day. I don't know if that varies by day, but it's still quite alarming. And then after they've logged an area, they basically firebomb it and incinerate it. And the damage goes meters down under the under the earth. And even as Uncle Dave mentioned, you know, we care for country that's for country that's under the surface as well. And that's our soil, and that destroys the biodiversity, and it destroys the regeneration and, you know, the habitats for our wildlife and our future generations. So this is a picture here of my niece, who was 3 at the time, and that's, you know, a really powerful shot. She's covered in ash, and that's her traveling her country and look witnessing, you know, her inheritance, which is, yeah, pretty disgusting. So yeah, the logging is a huge concern for us, and we don't feel it's wrapping up quick enough. And there's one more image, which is an aerial shot, I'm pretty sure, next, of just a couple of the logging coops, which show the intense scarring of country. And yeah, the damage, it's damage for generations. And this is right near our water catchments as well. So what I try to teach kids is how we need to be proud of the clean air that we breathe, but also the water we have down here in the southeast. We've got some of the best drinking water on the planet. And, you know, we're pretty close to poisoning it. And I don't mean to polarize people or be negative, but this is just, you know, really important for people to really get the message and support us in getting these industries, you know, shifted or transitioned to more sustainable practices. So on that note, Lydia, I will hand over to you to respond to this discussion about how we can encourage communities to, or people, you know, just mainstream to support us in caring for country and what they can do in their daily lives to make a bit of change.
I think we need to flip the hierarchy in this country upside down and demand from the people on the bottom, which are the dodgy politicians in our federal parliament. The people on the top are the movement, the people power. They're the ones that have the ultimate say in this country, not the Prime Minister. But we need to turn that into reality and action. And climate justice will never happen without Black justice. You will never get climate justice if we don't get Black justice first, because with Black justice comes climate justice. And that's the other thinking that we need to turn in this country, because as much as you see the devastation out there, there are knowledge holders within our cultural law system that can heal that, can fix that. So it's not the end of the world, but until Black justice happens, we will get to that point. So you have to keep us alive to keep country alive. And to keep us alive, you've got to not just come out for a climate rally, you've got to come out for a Black Lives Matter rally. And you've got to come out and support sisters like Zena and her mob in Barkandji country to protect their water, like the DjabWurrung trees on the Western Highway. We put up the front line, and still today we're fighting them in the courts, but we didn't give in. We didn't give in to the laws, the colonial laws of the system. We bypassed all of that by saying we are sovereign to that country. You can't separate us. Sovereignty means you can't separate us. You can kill us, you can lock us up, you can take our kids, but you can't separate us. We're always connected there. And so what I do in my role as one of these politicians in the federal parliament, and I don't know how I got there, I still question that myself today, but I'm there. And we need more people who have that lived experience and who can fight for Black justice, just as I do, to protect us all in this country. And so the work that I do, I'll be announcing my Care for Country policy next week, because the Jukan report is coming out, and it's a pretty good report. I encourage everyone to have a look at it. There's stories around the country from blackfellas about destruction of land and water and what's happening. And, you know, there's beautiful paintings, one in particular from an elder from Borroloola, who talks about the gifts, you know, the four-wheel drives when the mining companies come in, and how they just offered all of these gifts and money and jobs and four-wheel drives. And so he's done a traditional painting with the four-wheel drives raining from the sky because the mining companies come into town. And so there's unconscionable conduct going on around this country, and I would say illegal activity, by getting manufactured consent from our people to destroy. What you can do is, if you're not enrolled to vote, and I hate the colonial system, hated enrolling to vote myself, and feel very uncomfortable walking into a colonised space to do my work. But we have to get people enrolled to vote, and we have to get people educated on who they should vote for. We have a Labor Party and a Liberal Party who take donations from companies that contribute 2/3 of fossil fuels in this country. 2/3 of the pollution in this country comes from the donors that donate to these two parties. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but do your homework and know that the corruption in politics is real. And until we take that out of it, we're appeasing to the developers and the mining companies who are destroying. So that's what you can do. We'll continue to fight. We've got another Black female senator coming in starting Monday from WA, so she comes with a whole other experience. But we need to get more real people in there, and more Black women particularly. So thanks.
Ooh, I feel like we need an applause sound. Thanks, Lydia. Yeah, that was just in true Lydia fashion, just so powerful and so honest and real, and that's what we need. And Zena, you know, you're being honest and real, and it's you know, we could be here all day, but I'm just looking at the chats that are coming through, and there's so many great comments. You know, people are responding really well. The photos are really important, that people get to have a visual of that, so people are quite disgusted along with us. I will remind everyone that there's a Q&A section down the bottom if you want to pop a couple of questions in, because we'll have probably about 5 minutes to get through some questions for Lydia and Zena. But yeah, there was some other discussion points that I had, but I will just, you know, wrap it up, because we've covered a lot through what we've spoken about. Zena did mention to me a little bit earlier, and I myself was aware of, you know, for me, moving away from dairy or cow's milk, I know on Gunditjmara country, I see it when I'm up on the, Lydia's face, no cow's milk, but yeah, from up high, you can see the irrigation and the really green, healthy patches, which are for the pastoral areas, the dairy pastoral areas, and then the rest of it's really dry and quite sad. And the almond milk industry, so I switched to almond milk so that I could lessen my contribution to that space, but now we've got an almond problem, and the almonds, which I thought was only in California kind of thing, but I still have pulled back from purchasing almond milk, but it's actually here, it's on our doorstep. It's actually, we have almond farms and crops that are popping up along the Barkandji, the Yarra River, and these take up enormous amounts of water, and water's being sold, irrigated. It's all happening right now. And it's grown, I think Zena mentioned, in the last year by 50%.
Since 2016, just on the Murray-Darling Basin, it's grown by 50%. And since 2000, 900% those crops have grown by. They use 3 times more water than, like, for example, wheat. And they have a 6-month growing season, which is why they have to put them along waterways. And so each tree in its growing season uses between 8.5 and 10 megalitres of water per hectare. And it just takes so much water for them to grow, but also they have to use really intense pesticides. The industry also then, as a triple whammy, needs more hives than any other industry, so bees, to keep things going, but the pesticides are causing mass bee kills. But I guess one of the worst things is that it's the biggest horticultural crop in Australia at the moment, and not very many of us know about this problem. And the multinational companies, I think one of the biggest ones from Canada, and it's a superannuation company. So again, superannuation, it's not this benign sort of part of our lives. It gives people real power to damage country if they wish to through their industries that they're powering through our money. They're buying up in lots of different places around Australia. And so this is a problem that's probably going to keep stretching out. And it's not just the almond industry. I'm just sort of, I guess we were yarning, Stace, because I was just talking about how we all need to know a bit more about what's going on, because this industry has grown exponentially, almost unchecked. And they've got a really powerful lobby group behind them, because there's more than 200 million in sales every year, because we're the second biggest exporter of almonds now in the world, behind California. They've got this publicity machine. So if you go onto their websites, it shows you that they're composting, they're doing all of these things, but nothing can take away from how much water they're using, the pesticides they're using, the fact that it's getting rid of biodiversity because it's a monoculture. I just think we all just need to be more educated about what's happening in our country, because water is going to be one of the single biggest problems for all of us in future times. Because on my country, we were one of the first ones to get hit by the pastoral industry. And what's happened on my country, these things happen in waves. And all of our waterways, not in a woo-woo blackfella way that people don't really understand, are connected. We're all connected spiritually, we're all connected to country, but our waterways are actually physically connected. And people don't seem to understand that. What happens on one waterway, our lifeblood, can happen very quickly on another. And if we don't all become aware of these industries that are being let to go unchecked, it will be coming to a waterway near you, and soon. And I hate to be the harbinger of doom, because there is so much that we can all do. And I think being aware of what's going on is a big one. Now, I don't want to say don't anyone buy almonds, because there's probably some great Australian companies who are doing things in a way that, you know, might not be so damaging. But I think we at least need to be aware of what's happening in these industries, because they're causing destruction at a rate that is just unbearable. And when you think of, like, geographically, just the catastrophic problems with water that have been concentrated on that Murray-Darling system, for that crop to have grown by 50% since 2016 is outrageous. And yet I didn't know about it. I heard about it and started researching, and it just blew my mind.
Thanks for elaborating on that, Zena, and helping educate me and the audience on this one, because I think it's pretty important. Hold that up, so stand by. I'll be sharing stuff about that. But yeah, so I thought I'd jump into the Q&A, because we've got a couple of minutes left and there's a couple of questions there. So jump in.
Comment on what Zena said. And look, I think that as women, sovereign Black women, even if it were you two, and cut the politician, but a complete social media discussion about almond milk, I'm sitting here feeling so guilty, because I can't have dairy and I do have almond milk, and my 13-year-old is behind the screen saying, what, I can't eat almonds anymore? So I think you are spot on, Zena, sister, that we need to educate people on what is happening and what the alternative is, or what the solution is. And we can talk about that because we are the women of water, okay? And we can educate it in a way where people don't feel bad, that they can come along and hear some truths about what is going on to country as a result. So let's do that. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, well, we won't leave it at that, okay? I think it's good to unpack it further and, as you said, help educate people. And then there's obviously sustainable, you know, let's prop the ones who are doing sustainable practices. Let's prop the ones who are, you know, trying to make that difference. People say they can't purchase organic or local because it's too expensive, but yet we'll go to Woolworths and, you know, buy up these cloned vegetables, which that's another story. But yeah, it's just about trying to, I don't know, shift the way you look at it and the way you purchase. So yeah, I'll be hitting you up for that, Lydia and Zena. So Catherine Van Wilkenberg has asked a question: what personal growth steps need to be taken by non-Indigenous artists to be able to work in solidarity with our local mobs to bring us all in? Maybe Zena, you could
I might leave this one for Lydia, I reckon.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, Zena's the artist.
Yes, and I'm the curator. You're the politician.
I know.
But I guess
it's in my body.
Personal growth steps that need to be taken by non-Indigenous artists to work in solidarity. Wow. I mean, I guess there's so many elements to that question, but in general, I think artists could amplify the voices of First Nations through their practices, or prioritise our voices and not speak for us on certain topics. I know that still does and can happen, and some don't do it intentionally. But I think it's about, as someone else said before, rather than us be a sprinkling on the cake later and sort of an afterthought, we need to be in that planning process from the very beginning. And, you know, we've got people out there who can consult. You know, if there's an art project, pay mob to come and consult for your project.
And I think as well, Stace, it's important to note, like, people are often working on their own things that are really important. And I know, like, we get pulled a lot into things, and I really appreciate the sentiment behind it all the time, that people are really wanting to do better. But I think, again, looking at that individual sort of responsibility, I think the best thing that people can do in all of their work and anything that they're doing is find ways in their own work that they're bringing benefit to country. Because if you're benefiting country, you're benefiting our mobs, and you're not sort of imposing on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to have to sort of take their energy towards what you're doing, because sometimes we don't have the capacity, and especially with elders. And I understand people are wanting to bring people in all the time, but I think if anyone's doing work that is directly benefiting country through education, through honouring, through any illumination that they can bring to a problem that country is facing, then they are supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and our imperatives.
Yeah, that's a great one. Thanks, Zena. And I'm looking, there's two more questions that I'm wary of time.
I've just got one quick answer. In fact, I don't have an answer, but Kim in the chat and Mandy in the chat nailed it. And it just quickly scrolls down, so I just caught it. Kim Kruger, hey sister, you talked about educate yourself, and Mandy's one came down first, and Mandy, you took the words out of my mouth. Decolonise.
Love it. Nice one, Lydia. You're a seasoned pro on these Zooms, aren't you? I told everyone, you know what you're doing here. So I love it. And it's so good to hear Mandy and Kim are out there and have a look at the chat. We've got mob watching who can also answer these questions, you know, and decolonise is a big one. And for me with this exhibition, I did opt for Indigenise, purely because galleries and some institutions, museums are colonial, well, you know, they're not black spaces, but we're indigenising them rather than decolonising them. But decolonising and what was it we were talking about a while ago, Lydia? It was reinstating, so, you know, bringing cultural knowledge and values back, and that's happening slowly. And on that note, there is a question asking Zena if you could speak a little bit about how Indigenous planting can nurture country.
Yeah, I guess that's a really big question, and a lot of people see me as an expert in this area, and I absolutely am not. Like, I'm only just starting here, and I think it's just because we're all so keen to know more, and there's not a lot of people sort of talking about it, or enough people. So I would say I'm not an expert in this area at all. The reason why I made the plant booklet is I saw, especially with young people and non-Aboriginal young people, that they're really, really interested in knowing more about country and about the specificity of place, about the knowledge that comes from the place that you are on and the community who has that long-standing relationship with country. So I wanted people to be able to open the door to understand more about our knowledges and that specificity of place. And I think the reason why I see Indigenous plants that are directly related to that place and kind of always has been being really important is because it's the best way to look after all aspects of country. So if you plant a plant that's supposed to be in that place, it means it's going to need less water, it's going to need less fertilizer. Indigenous plants need none, which is awesome. But it also is going to look after all the things that belong on that country, because those insects know that plant. And so I just see it as a way of almost a reparation to country for all that we've taken from her, to give her back what she knows and what she can deal with and the stories that she knows how to tell. And that's why I think Indigenous plants are really important, because also they open up people's minds to understand the specificity of place, the knowledge of that particular country and how that particular country is built to be looked after in a certain way. And that's a lot to do with the plants that nurture her.
Yeah, I totally agree. And with I know Lydia's going to jump in. I just want to elaborate that even with say for logging, for example, and then the way it's just so fast, it's a really fast process. It's not a gentle, slow nurturing process. So it's logged, cleared, burnt, and then they say that they replant, but what happens is the process brings heat-loving fauna back. So, we end up with heat-loving, instead of a rainforest, heat-loving bush country, and then the wildfires, kicking up, and that's all related. So, Lydia, what did you want to say?
Again, decolonise. It's about taking away these species from our earth that don't belong here, and decolonising by putting back what is meant to be there. It's decolonising. And I saw someone in the chat, shout out to Decolonising Solidarity for any ally out there that wants to know how to do that. They are brilliant, deadly supporters. But sis Zena, thank you. You put that so well. And yeah, if like you go to Parliament House in Canberra, and it's not only white and colonial and violent, you walk out to get some fresh air in the garden and it's like you're walking out in England. Not that I've been to England, but no native grass, no native plants. It's completely colonised, completely, including the gardens. So we have to decolonise in everything we do, and there's small ways that everyone can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And within the exhibition, your sister, Arika Walu, has done an installation with the grandmother digging sticks and honouring the matriarchy and that process of caring for country, and Murnong harvesting, which was our superfood. But it was also, it was not only a superfood for us and our bodies, but it was a superfood for country. And, as soon as, settlement or invasion happened, that was all stampeded and violently disrupted. So we need to get that back as well. There's another question here from Gareth Hart out at Barkandji. And I thought I'd read this one out, but I think we've kind of covered it in terms of quiet activism or what you can do. But he was just wondering how the best way forward for being louder than ever, or is there quiet activism. I probably didn't read that out to represent what your question meant, Gareth, but I think this is an opportunity for us to offer some foundations that you can support. And we don't have a lot of First Nations foundations at the moment, but we were talking earlier about pay the rent. So, you know, if you want to do some quiet activism, donate or encourage people to donate to first pay the rent, because that covers a lot of the issues here that we've been talking about. You know, it supports burials of our people when they pass away, and, you know, it's indirectly supporting other causes like deaths in custody, but also, you know, we can use pay the rent to have some offshoots into different areas such as the bush country and, you know, advocating for country through the First Nations space. So I hope that can help with your question there, Gareth. There was one here from Jeremy, our brother, our whānau from the Māori community. He and Tanya have tuned in. So question for Lydia: when she was initially thinking of getting into politics, who were her role models who helped her through the journey? And where did she face pushbacks and challenges, not just from the white system, but from mob as well?
In the interest of time, my family, my sisters like Stacie, strong, staunch Black women, and family, uncles. I did feel uncomfortable knowing that I would have to swear allegiance to the Queen. And I got permission from my family and got the strength from my family to be able to do that. I felt like I was sacrificing myself by doing that. And lost my train of thought. So that's to help me. What have I experienced? Yeah, there was a lot of mob who, you know, my 13-year-old daughter reminds me every time I'm cranky with her that I sold out to the colonizer Queen by swearing allegiance to her. She's 13. So that's when she starts that's her way of being cheeky to me, calls me a sellout and all of that. But that's, you know, it's good to be able to laugh about it, because I did cop that from my own mob, and I still do. There's a lot of things that I cop from a lot of different areas, like death threats, like some right-wing nut wants to kill me in another state. But you know what? My ancestors fought and died for us to be here. So why should we be any different? We've got a role to play here for our old people and our country to maintain its survival and our survival. And you just do it because you got your old people watching, you got your ancestors doing their best to keep you safe, and you just got to go with it.
Yeah. And you do it so well, Lyd. And you've got a lot of people backing you from those crazy people out there. But yeah, you stay strong, and I know you're surrounded by your old people and your mob. And Zena, likewise, you're surrounded by a lot of people, and we got you, sister. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank Uncle Dave, my elder, for his wonderful welcome to country and sharing of cultural knowledge. Lydia and Zena, you know, thank you for your time today. And I always love yarning with you girls, and I think we only really start warming up about now. But it's been really great, and I hope the audience has got a lot out of it. I'd like to express my gratitude for the opportunity to curate WILAM BIIK. Yeah, it's been a wonderful development opportunity for me, very challenging one, but I've grown a lot from it, and it's changed me for good. And yeah, thank you. I'd also like to thank the WILAM BIIK exhibition supporters, Helen McPherson, there's many, but particularly for this forum, Helen McPherson Smith Trust, Perpetual, and the Saturday Paper, which yeah, did some deadly advertising for us. And I actually spoke to Dan, your PA, Lydia, and he said he was opening the Saturday Paper to do the quiz, and there we were, our three faces were on page 2. So pretty cool. But yeah, look, I've just had a message from the team saying, you know, let's answer another couple of questions if we can, or I mean, we've run over 7 minutes. Do we want to answer one more question? I know you're busy, ladies. It's Saturday.
Blackfella time, it's all right.
Yeah, blackfella time. All right, so let's have a look. We've got let me see. How can art by First Nations artists lead the way in raising awareness of these issues? For example, which artist in WILAM BIIK would I highlight? Okay, so art is a really, and I'm sure Zena can attest to this, and Lydia having sisters, or a sister who's a very incredible artist and uses an arts medium for her activism. But arts is a really important space for us to express our stories. We're out there, you know, all year round in many different spaces. You know, we're rallying on Invasion Day. We're rallying during NAIDOC Week. We're pulled in all directions during Reconciliation Week. We're mourning, you know, and sorry business. I mean, especially at the moment, actually, I'll acknowledge that we've got mob who are in sorry business at the moment. But yeah, and the deaths in custody, we've had more recently. And, you know, even women out there, like, you know, we've had people dying at the hands of, you know, people they trust. But we use our voices through any means we can. And the arts sector, for me, is a space where we can not only tell those stories, but we can celebrate, because we're pretty deadly people, you know. We can celebrate all our amazingness. We can celebrate our beautiful country. We can celebrate our intelligence. We've got some intelligent mob out there, and outside of academia, you know, academia. So we are spiritual. We're connected to country, and a lot of people are. A lot of mobs and cultures around the world are very much still connected to their spirituality. And yeah, I think in WILAM BIIK, you know, we've got Auntie Glenda Nichols, who's a Wurundjeri and Wadi Wadi and Yorta Yorta auntie and artist, and she's incredible. She created a drag net for her first drag net, which is 2 sticks and a woven net. It's a fishing practice of all, but she really advocates for the women's sustainable fishing practices and how they caught their feeds in the river up on the Murray, Dungala. And there's a river mussel shell. It's beautiful. It's a decoration on the net. And that's a really beautiful part of her piece that's in there. But, you know, the story about that is that she collected it in the Darling River when it had dried up. So she walked in and collected this river mussel. So even though it looks beautiful, it's, you know, a story of the dried up river. We've got Kent with the Barkandji blue skies, you know, and I felt it was really important to have the sky country in there, and he honours the beautiful blue sky country, and also the cosmos and star stories, which is, you know, about 2 sisters who were sent to the stars, and there's a whole creation story there, but it also links to family that came together to honour matriarchs on the day he took the photos that make up the Barkandji Blue Sky series. So it's really beautiful. And Stephen Roll's installation with the vibration, there's a subwoofer in the installation which vibrates, and there's an image that he took of a big boulder out on Tanarong country, and that represents the geological history of Tanarong country. And just like Gary Word, you know, there's some incredible rock formations and geological stories and timelines. These have been here for just for so long, you know, eons. And that's one story that I find you know, really interesting. At Tanarong country, it's just up the road. And there's also trying to think in terms of the, oh gosh, Auntie Nanette, sure. This is a big one. This is the story of the Kelp Forest, which is the under ocean forest. This is, you don't see this forest, but it's in massive decline. It's so yeah, it's in huge decline. We should be really concerned, but again, I don't want to be the bearer of doom and gloom. But the mobs in Tasmania have been collecting bull kelp and making these beautiful water carriers for thousands of generations. So Auntie Nanette still practices this making of the water carriers, and we have 3 of them in the exhibition, and they're from large, medium and small, and we've displayed them in a way so that it sort of, you know, tells a story of that decline of the kelp. It's getting harder to source, just like the seashells that used to cover the beaches over there, but now it's really hard to source the seashells that you know, that they make their necklaces with and do their stringing. Truganini wore a Tasmanian seashell strung necklace, and I love that the women are still doing these practices down there. It's a form of resistance and survival. And yeah, there's a lot of those themes woven through WILAM BIIK. So I really hope you get up to see it. But yeah, I've done the thank yous, and yeah, do you have any closing remarks? I think we've gone over with answering that one more question, but yeah.
Stace, I wanted to ask you a question about WILAM BIIK.
Yeah.
And it looks like Uncle Dave wants to talk, so I'll just be real quick.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, so it's obviously been really heart-wrenching for you to not be able to open with all of the work and wanting to honour the artists and all the work you've done for the last couple of years on this show. But I wanted to sort of positively ask you, can you tell us some of the things that, even though you haven't been able to open for a full run and you're probably only going to get like a small period where people are going to be able to see it, what's some of the positive things that, no matter whether you got your opening on time or your full run, what's some of the things that's happened for you and being able to let those messengers from our ancestors, our artists, speak in the way that they have? Like, what have you still gained, even though you know, didn't get what you thought you were getting in terms of the run of the show?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's been a lot of great, I had to really remind myself of that when I was in despair over no one being able to come and see the show. But really, there's been a lot of it. The whole process has been incredible. I mean, I know that Paola, whose beautiful installation she did 3 days before the lockdown happened, and she was in there with her daughter Rosie, and we were hanging the painting, this beautiful little painting that her grandmother Rosie did. And yeah, that in itself, and all of us coming together, and Auntie Joy was there, and that in itself was beautiful. We got to bond. These mobs got to come up onto Wurundjeri country, and you know, I know they really enjoyed it. I know Paola felt really good being up there. Yeah, there's also been a lot of like, even with Stephen Rowell, he normally works on, he's a very highly conceptual artist, but he really focused on his ancestral country there and on Tanarong country. And I think for him, we connected it with stone tools from Tanarong country that were in the museum's collection. So we pulled those out and put them next to his space. So that shows the, you know, the geological timeline is on the stone tools as well. They might be small and go in drawers, but these big boulders, they couldn't collect them and put them in drawers, could they? So they're still out there on country. And but also, yeah, I think I've learned a lot more about our connections. I really had to go in and research, you know, research is a loaded word, but I had to go in and really explore how to bring it all together, and it helped me understand this part of country more. Yes, there's a lot of issues, environmental crises down here, but gosh, we've got beautiful country down here. We've got some of the oldest and most beautiful, tallest flowering gum trees in the world. And again, we've got the most beautiful, clean drinking water and these rivers. You know, I hope the Barker is flowing again like this here, sis. You know, that's the goal. But yeah, we've just got beautiful country here. And yeah, I mean, seeing Auntie Kim Wandin's weaving practices that she had handed down to her from Granny Jemima through her grandmother, which is so present in that gallery space. You can see it. It's a visual continuity of traditional practices. And she wove the frames as well to frame pictures of Granny Jemima and her 3 other ancestors. And yeah, it's it's brought a lot of people together, and we've got Barak paintings, Barak personal tools and ancestor tools in the same space, and they've returned home. You know, they've returned home. So that's been major. And I'm aware, Uncle Dave, I want you to jump in. What were you going to say?
Thanks, Stacie. Look, it's been a pleasure to hear all three of you. And of course, I do know you all, some more personal than others. I would have liked to jump in on a lot of the conversations, but we wouldn't finish this till 3 o'clock if we did that. That's for sure. I didn't say it in my welcome, but the message that I'm getting and being able to read the chat rather than being one of the panelists, it is only by walking country together, both black and white, that we can heal country. And when you heal country, you actually heal people, not just us as Aboriginal people, but also the other people that live in Australia and call it home. They will find themselves getting healthier, and they wouldn't even realise that they were sick because it's not something that they're aware of. One thing, and I'm not going to call it a conspiracy or anything, when I talk about healthy country, not just here in Australia, but as I look at what's happening to Indigenous peoples around the world and the desecration of their forests and their waterways, we're not singular here in Australia where this is only happening here. The latest pandemic, the coronavirus that we all are living with at the moment, I believe that the climate justice discussion began back in the 70s. It may have began earlier, but it was started to be publicised back in the 70s. Some scientists realised things were happening. It took a while for the scientific community to come on board to say, yes, this is happening. It took a long time, and it's still taking a long time for governments to actually accept that climate change is happening, let alone dealing with climate justice. The reality is, if we had have listened to the words back then of the scientists and listened to our elders, when my father was teaching me the changes from when he grew up as a child up here in Healesville, and what he showed me in 1990 when I moved back up here to live, that these were that had never been part of his life story. Because it's been ignored for so long, I believe that our creator spirit, Bunjil, the general white population that has a God, whether that be Catholic, Presbyterian, whatever, but all other races around the world, who may have a creator spirit, whether that be Buddha or, look, I can't think of any off the top of my head at the moment, because there's a difference between religions and cultures. Religion is written, culture is what you live. That if we had have looked after our climate the way that we as Aboriginal people, Indigenous people around the world have the responsibility to do, we would have healthy country. The healthier the country is, the healthier we are as people, and we would never have had to put up with COVID in the first place. COVID would not have been able to get a foothold. I find it amazing that what they said, and they've been saying since the 1970s, that looking after the environment was too expensive because it upset the circular economy that we all live in this modern industrialised world. Whereas we as Aboriginal people, we live in a circular ecology. And this is what we are actually responsible to do. But isn't it amazing that when we got COVID, that all of a sudden the world pulled together and found trillions of dollars to deal with COVID, which we are not going to actually eradicate. It's going to exist for a long time, no matter what promises we're getting told by the governments. If they had spent their yearly budgets from 1970 up till now, which still might have cost $1 trillion, I'm not going to try and put a price on it, but if they had spent that back from the 1970s when they knew all this was happening, we would never have got COVID in the first place. So let's look after our environment, not recreate something that is a wish list, because you want to bring, someone wants to bring a piece of their country to our country to understand what it means. So there's many points I could have picked up throughout the whole conversation. But yes, get our Indigenous plants back in the ground, remembering that 85% of our plants that I know of are either food, they're fibre, they're medicine, they're shelter. And as Zena rightly pointed out, and I'm actually working with Zena, she's helping me in our bush foods endeavour to reintroduce bush foods back out into the supermarkets eventually. But they don't require water. They don't require fertiliser. They just require to be grown in the right place. They need to be harvested at the right times, not just because someone demands that their shelves get filled. If we start to learn back off the land to only grow what it can actually support without any devastating effects, and this will take years to do, but we will actually then be able to get rid of things like coronavirus and all the other pandemics we've got. We need to start understanding what country can give instead of forcing it to give what it's not able to do. It's a wish list, but for me, it's a goal. I know it won't happen in my lifetime, but it does not mean that we should, all of us or any of us, stop what we're doing. Continue the fight. Passive activism, I've seen it come up in the chat. Plant native grasses on your nature strip. You are entitled to do that. If you can't plant them in your own backyard, plant them in your pot plants on your balcony, in your high-rise flats. They will clean the air. They'll bring the right insects. The right insects will eat the right spiders. They'll knock off the right flies. They'll deal with the mosquito problem. If you understand what the balance of the Australian ecology is, you will find that you will live much, much better. The little things that you don't even know that annoy you will actually disappear out of your life. And that way you can contribute more and more, so that when you go out in the bush, you'll actually understand what you're looking at. You'll understand what's missing. You'll know what's beautiful, and you'll know what's sick. And so my message is, let's walk country together so we can heal country together, and then we can all truly call ourselves Australians. Thank you.
Wow. I just have to do it because Uncle Dave, that's the perfect way to finish this panel, this forum. Thank you for summing it up with that. That's some incredible information. I love it. The passive activism plant, I love it. I'll be doing that. Obviously, I live up on country anyway, but yeah, if you're in the city, you can still do it. But yeah, I just will remind you that this recording will be up on the website, and we will answer any other questions that people have. Just, pop them on the website. There'll be a space in there somewhere. But yeah, any questions for anyone, we'll get it to them. But thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Yeah, it's gone over, but it was a really great discussion. It's a Saturday. Thanks for taking the time. Uncle Dave, you're a legend.
Thanks for having us.
Treaty.
Treaty in this country.
Yeah, treaty in this country. Everyone who watched, thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do it now.
In the Wurrung language, WILAM BIIK means home country. And in this exhibition, we'll be learning about the unsevered connection between 10 artists of the Southeast Australian region. This exhibition really prompts you to think about how we see country, how we listen to country, and how we connect to country. Having an exhibition up on this significant part of Wurundjeri country was really important for me to honour the ancestors of this place first. So in the first section of the exhibition, you'll experience a metaphoric welcome to country. In this space, we have 5 beautiful William Brack paintings and a drawing by Timothy Corkanoon. These were all done up here in this region, so that's really significant. And there's ancestor tools and adornments which were created in the southeast of Australia, but most of them were created also up here, whether on Corrandirt Mission or were found nearby. Having the ancestor tools and adornments with contemporary tools and adornments made by present day community is really significant. Really, I feel like the ancestor tools are coming home for the first time, but actually having them in the same space, the gravity of that is really amazing. By embedding these cultural values, every visitor who comes through will know that there's been great care in putting this show together and that you're welcome on Wurundjeri country. William Brack's paintings display a very important part of our culture, and that's ceremony. So we have his depiction of traditional ceremony and traditional ways, but we also have the current ceremonial practices by the Djiri dance group. We also have Auntie Kim Wandin, a Wurundjeri elder, who does weaving practices and continues this for the next generation. She learnt the stitch from her grandmother, who learnt it from Granny Jemima, who's also honoured in this space. Country is really present in the gallery through these works. Paola's bush dyeing. She collects with her mum and her daughter Rosie, and they dye up silk and calico, and they're talking while they're doing it. It's a very lengthy process. That's also a part of, say, your weaving practices, whereby women would sit together and yarn and weave their tools, and the voices of these ancestors or contemporary artists are all woven or dyed or sung into these materials. Kent's work is really fascinating in Barkandji Blue Skies, and with this particular one he's expanded on that body of work, which is ancestral connections. You're taken to Barkandji country. It's about community and about a gathering of family. And then you have the corellas, which represent the cosmos and the star story, but also in Barkandji Blue Skies, these corellas, within 5 minutes of them landing on a big telecommunications tower, Kent captured these images. It's quite significant to see these totems, if you like, or spirit protectors adapting to a new world through these giant metal towers. Stephen Rahl's work really links us to that story of deep time. So of the earth, Stephen went out and photographed boulders on his ancestral country, Tanarong country, and he chose an image that really spoke to him, and then created an installation of a vibration which represents the land movement and that old geological history of that country. Deanne's beautiful depictions of birds and animals and also women and ceremony within the paintings are they really take you to a time of gatherings, of honouring certain values. So each spirit protector would have a different kind of personality or a different value connected to it, and this really encompasses a large range of cultural knowledge within these paintings. Intergenerational learning is extremely important for, I think, most First Nations artists, but particularly the artists in this exhibition. You can really see the transgenerational influences and the honouring of the people that have walked before us. Letty Nichols, who's represented in Glenda's space, her feather flowers, which are a really beautiful practice that many mobs have taken on over time, and Glenda kept that practice going in a contemporary way, so it's so nice to place them side by side, showing that story of two generations. Since invasion and colonisation, our mobs have seen great change to their communities and to their home country. And a lot of the themes within the exhibition so far relate to the past and the present, honouring ancestors and generations that have walked before us, but they also really speak to the themes of resistance, survival and climate change. For her new commission, Glenda has created for the very first time a dragnet. Adorned on the dragnet is a native river mussel, which is really beautiful, and I love that we have native river mussels and they're represented in this space. However, the river mussel that Glenda collected was from the Darling once it had dried up. So there's a link to the devastation and loss of waterways by the fact that Glenda could go in and collect this from a dried up riverbed. In the southeast Australian region, we have a superfood known as murnong, or the yam daisy. So it's a root vegetable or a root food source which is grown under the ground, and it provided incredible nutrients for the clans around the area. Arika's work represents that murnong harvesting ceremony. This honours the matriarchal processes of passing on cultural knowledge from one generation to the next, but also the women's ceremony of harvesting murnong to feed their families. In the space, there are 2 large-scale digging sticks which represent the staunch matriarchal sharing and ways of teaching. As well as that, Arika's wallpaper, which represents bloodlines, it symbolises Arika's vision to see the fields of green covered again in yellow, which is how they once were before, as Arika describes, they were violently disrupted. Rhiannon's paintings are a really strong depiction of this historic harm to country and to the bodies of our ancestors. Rhiannon's paintings really exert a truth-telling. She accompanies her paintings with poetry, which really take you to the heart of her work and to the stories of her connection to country. Nanette Shaw, who descends from the Trawulway and Tirilor people of Tasmania, I felt it was really important to represent the people of Tasmania because their connections cross the ocean. This story is really significant because it represents the under-ocean country, and these are the forests of the ocean, the giant kelp forests which are in great decline and have been for some time. Nanette and her community, they have been resisting for a long time through the creation of these water carriers made out of kelp. What I really hope people can take away from this exhibition is that this is your home as well, and we hope that you can see it through our eyes and connect with it as we do and listen to it. There's a lot of deep knowledge and beautiful stories around caring for country and ways that you can embed these values into your daily life.